Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We are talking a little bit tonight. Kevin is with me. We're going to talk a little sports. We're going to talk about Philly. We're going to talk about Bruce. Who knows what we'll discuss. So, welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Jesse. Thanks for having me. How are you
Yeah,
doing?
I am good. It's always nicer the day after a Monday night football game when your team wins. There is nothing, there are many things worse, but as a sports fan, top of the list is you stay up Monday night and your team gets their asses kicked on Monday night football, and then you got to get them go to work the next morning. So,
Well, listen, it's a big win over the Raiders, right? The two and eight,
yeah.
two and eight Raiders. If that doesn't get the Cowboys turned around, then I don't know what will.
What we were talking about, Kevin, is the Raiders, the dad and kid were going, this is it. It's the Cowboys. We could turn our stick around.
Oh
So,
yeah, they're looking at it that way. But yeah, Eagles play the Cowboys next week, and I just wish that game had a little bit more luster to it. It feels like Dallas week now up here is just another game, which is strange, sad. But I'm 41, so when I was growing up, it was when the Cowboys won the three Super Bowls in 4 or 5 years, however many that was. So they were public enemy number one for me up here. If you're like a 20-something-year-old kid now growing up in the Philadelphia area, you don't remember, you aren't old enough to remember when the Cowboys were relevant. So they've seen Eli Manning win two rings, and so I think they look at the Giants as more of a rival. But yeah, you never know. Maybe we'll get it back to what it once was in the heyday.
if you don't mind, I'm going to stick to this for a couple of minutes, Kevin, because
Please.
it's true. My son is 36, so he was born in 89. He is quick to tell people he was a Landry baby. He was here for 3 weeks before Landry got fired. So he can barely remember the good times. Because he was just way too young. And he's just watched some really bad football. And he was talking about, he says, with all my heart, I want to hate the quarterback for the Eagles, but I can't. He's too good of a guy. He's
Oh, and he's a
just,
Texas guy too.
yeah.
On top of that, it's funny. I think individually, the individual games between the Eagles and Cowboys are always competitive, and they have been competitive and balanced for 20, 25 years now. I mean, I think it's almost split down the middle, actually, probably if you go back 10 years. I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but yeah, it's just not. But like from a macro level, the Eagles have obviously been to three Super Bowls since 2017, and they've won two of them. And the Cowboys have this drought, this Super Bowl NFC championship game drought. That I think has influenced a lot of younger kids around here because we're like, oh, yeah, I can't stand the Cowboys. I hate the Cowboys. They're the worst and whatever. Now I got these like 20-year-old kids looking at me like, I don't really get it
Yeah,
because they just grew up with the different Cowboys than you and I did.
it is. And the idea that was used to be the NFC East was just murder, right? You had the Commanders, you had the Giants, you had the Eagles, you had the Cowboys, and you're like, okay. And when you're sitting there at the beginning of the season, all right, if we can split the division, right? Like either win
Yeah.
our home one or win, but it's going to be rare. You're going to sweep the division. And it just hasn't been that way in a long time.
No, I think it's funny too. I think the stat that kind of sums it up more than anything is that the Eagles, barring a crazy collapse here, are in line to be the first repeat winner in the NFC East since 2004,
Yeah.
which is just crazy. It's a lot of the Eagles and Cowboys winning it, the Commanders spotty, and then the Giants here and there too. But it's crazy to me that it's been, yeah, 2004 when Andy Reid and Donovan McNabb were in Philadelphia. That was the last time that there was a repeat division winner. And I think the Eagles won it 4 times in a row back then. The Cowboys won it 4 or 5 times in a row back in the 90s. But other than that, it's just a division there it just doesn't happen, man. It doesn't happen in the NFC East.
Yeah. And the other thing that the sportscasters here in Dallas, I'm a big ticket fan, and they'll talk about how just good the Philadelphia's front office organization is. I mean,
Yeah.
the team makes deals in March and April so that when they go into the draft, they know what they're going on, and they seem to sign people early. And Jerry, bless his heart, signs. There used to be a joke, right? I dressed my kids for yesterday's weather, and Jerry seems to just sign people based on the last trend. They're never ahead of the trend. And so like trading Micah Parson. If you're going to do that, you do it in the off season, you make a plan, and it's just crazy. We'll see, but yeah, and it should be a good game. It usually is. When the Eagles and the Cowboys play, it's always fun going back to Andy Reid and Buddy Ryan and just the great days.
I just hope,
So,
yeah, I hope it just gets back to that point for this generation because I remember how big those games were for me growing up. And hey, man, I'm just asking for good football at this point. That's my main
well,
thing.
yeah, Kevin, my son always calls them these are big boy games. And he just and so hopefully, yeah, that would be great. It would be great for the league. It would just be great for everyone.
I think
Uh,
so too, man. I agree with all that.
yeah, all right. I always like to start at the beginning. So talk about Kevin, where did you grow up and what kind of music was your family listening to?
Oh yeah, sure. So I'm from the Philadelphia suburbs, northwest suburbs, and my parents were thespians, and so they did musicals and plays, and it's actually how they met. They worked on they were in musicals together out here in the suburbs, and this was in the 1970s. They were doing stuff like Bye Bye Birdie and The Creature Creeps and The Crucible and all that kind of stuff. So they liked music that came from theater and whatnot, and my mom was a big John Denver fan. They would always I remember like very vividly on Saturdays, they would never have the TV on. They would always just be playing music. My mom would play John Denver, Amy Grant, David Bowie, stuff like that. My dad was like a Jethro Tull and Moody Blues and the Who fan, into that kind of stuff, into show tunes and whatever. And yeah, so music was just always around in the house when I was growing up. And I was a child of the 90s, so we listened to the radio and taped all the songs off the radio onto the cassette. We listened to Green Day and The Offspring and No Effects and the Red Hot Chili Peppers and all that stuff. And naturally, I think for most kids of that age, like we watched MTV. You watch Total Request Live, Carson Daly, and all that stuff, and bands like Limp Bizkit and Korn and all that kind of stuff. And back then, when guitar-based music was just prominent in pop culture, it opened the door to heavy metal for me. And I just got deep into all of it: thrash metal, speed metal, death metal, but all the classic stuff too: Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden. I'm wearing a Motorhead sweatshirt right
I
now.
saw
So
that.
yeah, so that was always more of that's where my main interest is. But I love old school hip hop and rock, Americana and whatnot. And I play guitar and I play bass and I play drums. So I think that influences like when you learn how to play something, you know what it takes to do that. I think you have a little bit more appreciation for it. But I just never like Bruce, I just never really clicked for me. And I asked my parents about it too. I'm like, were you ever Bruce fans? And they're like, no, it just never really clicked for us either. So I guess we were like the outliers in the
Well,
greater New Jersey and Philadelphia region.
we are going to talk about that in a little bit, Kevin, because you are the exception that proves the rule. I've I've been doing this for 10 years,
Yeah.
and one of the things I say is there is a good chance if you're a East Coast sports writer, you're a Bruce fan.
It's true, man. That's no, it's exactly true. It's funny because it's turned into a stereotype now, but I lived it. I've been in Philadelphia sports media for almost 18 years now. And yeah, I know guys in the local scene who Bruce comes around. They're like, "Oh, I'm going to Bruce tonight. Are you going?" I'm like, "No, I'm not going." And you're like, "Oh, this is my 17th time seeing him."
Yeah, exactly.
So
So
yeah, that's true. It's
I
not, yeah,
mean,
it's
it
absolutely
is.
true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I said. I want to hear how you got into sports, but before that,
Yeah.
you mentioned what drew you to making music, and you looks like you learned a fair amount of instruments. What
Yeah. Yeah.
drove that, Kevin? Is it your
No,
parents' love or
and that turned me on to music, but then when I just started going down a rabbit hole, like our generation, like I'm one of those, I'm in that like weird corner that they call, what do they call it? It's like elder millennials, I think is what we're called,
okay,
where we're millennials, but we really feel like we're Gen X spiritually. And this
okay,
was around the time that Napster and the internet started to explode and everybody had AOL at home and you just had access to a lot more music. So I think most of us just went down this rabbit hole and started discovering all of these new bands and we had access to music in a way that other people did not back in the day. And
yeah,
I just remember, God, I was like stumbling through some stuff. I remember watching this Judas Priest live VHS. It was in Dallas. It was live. They were live in Texas in 1986. I just remember KK Downing and Glenn Tipton going up on the stage and doing this sort of synchronized, like moving, like kind of head banging rock and roll thing. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. So I went and bought a crappy guitar from the pawn shop and I just started teaching myself how to play. And that was it. It really stemmed from like those 1980s, like rock and roll heavy metal bands like Iron Maiden and Thin Lizzy Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, all that stuff. And that's really where it came from. And then when I went to college, I went to West Virginia, and I wasn't too much into the partying and drinking and all that kind of scene. I sat in
Yeah.
my dorm, I'd sat in my dorm and I played guitar for 6 or 7 hours at a time. That's just where it came from. I was just obsessed with music, and that's why I started picking up instruments in the first place and learning how to play them.
I thought of you mentioned Americana and Jason Isbell has talks about that, right? Like he just says it isn't
Yeah.
rehearsal for me. It's just what I would do, whether I got paid or not, is I would just sit there and play the guitar all the time.
Yeah, no, it's funny, man. They oftentimes, I don't know if your listeners have seen the movie Office Space, but they do the activity where it's like, if you didn't have to work ever again,
Yeah,
what would you do with your free time? And the
yeah.
exercise is that's supposed to inform what kind of job you do want to do. And if I didn't have to work, I would just sit and play music all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there all you already talked about growing up an Eagles fan and assume a fan of all local Philly teams, but was there an early desire to do that for a living?
No, there really wasn't. I stumbled into it. I was really interested in news. I was a
Okay.
news junkie. I went to school for broadcast journalism. I wrote for the newspaper in high school, wrote for the newspaper in college, worked on the TV news program in high school. I just knew at a very early age that I had zero interest in math or
Okay.
science or engineering or any of the useful STEM
Yeah.
disciplines. But yeah, my mom was an English teacher, and we just have always been involved in words and reading and the liberal arts and that kind of thing. So long story short, graduated from school. I went to Georgia, worked at two TV stations down in Georgia, came back to Philadelphia, worked at a TV station, worked at a news station in Philadelphia. I was writing teleprompter copy and producing shows, going out with the camera and all that kind of stuff. And I just had extra time on the side where I picked up a side gig reporting on the Major League Soccer team up here, which was brand new in 2010. And it came to a point where I just started enjoying doing that more than doing the news stuff. Because you know how it is, man. I'm sure it's the same down there where you are, where you watch the evening news, you watch the morning news or whatever. It's all negative stuff, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
This
depressing.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's depressing. This guy got shot, this guy got stabbed, this building fell over, this car. You do
Yeah.
that for 10 years and like your brain is fried. It was nice to step away from that and get into sports full time. And I just ended up running this website up here, and I've been doing it for almost 10 years now. So it's a great job. It's great to have a platform and be able to use it for a lot of things, whether they're goofy or useful or whatever. But yeah, we've been going strong at Crossing Broad for a long time now. So we
Tell
knock
me
all
a
wood
little,
and we're
yeah, tell me a little bit more about that website and
yeah,
where it's
it
going.
actually started as a basement blog, believe it or not. The old cliche about the guy who's sitting in his underwear in his mom's basement and typing behind a keyboard. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And it was a guy named Kyle, and he just had this blog style, doing a lot of writing, a lot about the Philadelphia Phillies specifically, and it just worked. That irreverent, fun, not taking things too seriously style. People compare us to Barstool. I've never really felt that's accurate. I feel like we're more like the old school Deadspin from
Okay.
what that was with Drew Magary and those guys back in the day. But he brought me on board in 2017, and then when crazy story when the Supreme Court struck down the rule that allowed like only Vegas to have legal sports betting. Pennsylvania and New Jersey were two of the states that came in first and to legalize. And the guy who was running Crossing Broad at the time, he basically dropped off the face of the earth for a couple weeks. Came back and he told the rest of the group, he's like, I have this amazing plan to make millions of dollars. We're going to create a network where we're going to create a pipeline where we're going to find customers for DraftKings and FanDuel and BetMGM and whatever. So all the promo code stuff that you hear now, all the
Yeah.
click here and put this in, that pretty much started with him.
Wow.
Yeah, and he got a lot of interest doing that from Europe, where gambling was already legal. And he turned around 2 years later and he sold the site for $25 million.
Wow, that's nice.
Yeah, yeah. And we've been with two companies ever since. He got us full-time jobs with great salaries and benefits. And yeah, it was really just a good classic American dream. Have a
Yeah.
good idea, act on it, make it big kind of story. Yeah.
Yeah. It is. I'm old enough to remember that you could not even think about mentioning gambling and involved with sports. It was just, and
Mhm.
now then it, they are just so entwined together. The
Yeah.
Raiders are in Vegas now.
I know, and I have to be aware of like how much is too much and going
Yeah.
overkill with that. But gambling saved a lot of websites and media companies, and it's the reason that a lot of sports journalists have jobs now because
Right.
advertising just isn't what it used to be.
Mhm.
And I know people probably get sick of seeing all the commercials and stuff, but that's bottom line, man. It's keeping a lot of people employed.
And that's a great thought about it. What are some of the stories or events that you've covered that, you're really proud of?
I mean, I'll give you one. My hometown, just a small town out here in the suburbs.
Yeah.
There's a dilapidated hockey rink there, just an outdoor hockey rink for ball hockey and whatever. And pickleball has been huge up here, as I'm sure it is down there too, and
Yeah.
everywhere across the country. And they were going to dismantle the old hockey rink and they were going to replace it with pickleball courts. And there were some young girls that were still playing in the rink, an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old. And their mom reached out to me and said, "Hey, I know you grew up here. Here's what's going on. They're going to get rid of this hockey rink. Can you help us?" They wanted to try to save this rink and they were looking for help getting media coverage and publicizing. And I was like, "Sure, I hate pickleball. I would be happy. I would be
Sure.
happy to help you defeat pickleball." And we were able to get the attention of the Philadelphia Flyers just through our platform and our connections with the Flyers. A lot of good people down there. Philadelphia Flyers came in and they put $200,000 into building a brand new rink up there for the entire community to use. And it would have been a great story whether it's my hometown or not. But that's just a good example of being able to have a platform and use it for something positive.
I love that. Of course, I'm still getting my head around as living in Dallas, Texas, that there's a standalone rink outside that could get cold enough to
Yeah.
ice.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. No, it's crazy. Yeah, it's hockey. Ed Snyder was the former owner of the Philadelphia Flyers for a long time and did a
Yeah.
lot of charity work around here. And he's got ice hockey rinks, he's got ball hockey rinks all around the area. And yeah, really, the thing that keeps like the youth engine going here is his philanthropy.
Yeah, because I've talked to buddies that will say, yeah, the expensive part of playing hockey here in Dallas is the rink time, right? Because you've
Yeah,
got to go somewhere versus a park there. All right.
yeah.
Yes. What Kevin and I connected is he wrote a very entertaining article about the Bruce Springsteen movie and kind of, hey, it didn't work out too well. And in that, you had some hot Bruce opinions. So why don't we start with the movie? Did you see it? And I take it you did not care for it?
No, I did not see it, and I don't have plans to watch it. And
Okay.
people were giving me crap about it because they're like, you didn't tell the full story. You're like, and a lot of them were like, it was written about the Nebraska era and when Bruce was having issues with his dad or whatever. And I don't know. I guess what they were saying is if it was written about the mid '70s era Bruce or mid '80s Bruce or something, maybe it would have
Yeah.
been different. And I was just thinking like, every Bruce fan I know is a diehard. So
Yeah.
I don't know a Bruce fan who's a casual fan. So I would
Right.
think that you would go to see a movie no matter what it's about. But apparently that was not the case. But yeah, I always try to take a shot at Bruce whenever I can just because it's so in your face up here, man. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, because we're in the area where his sphere of influence is like the largest. We're talking about the
Yeah.
sports writer thing earlier.
Yeah, it is because out in Philly fans, because I've had a fair amount of fans from the Philadelphia area, there was pride that they were one of the first groups outside of Jersey that found him and
That's right.
supported his music. And there is that a lot of he's one of ours.
That is
And
true. Yeah, it's
and
absolutely
so
true. Yep.
yeah, my my joke is that I've talked to a fair amount of fans can't agree on what kind of Springsteen movie they wanted.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that kind of makes it tough.
Did you go see it?
Yeah, I went Thursday
Yeah.
night before it opened everywhere on that Friday. And at the end of it, I went, I really liked it. But is this a movie that the casual audience is going to enjoy?
Well, yeah,
Because,
that's what I was asking. I was thinking to myself, who is the audience for this?
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I
And
think if you're a Bruce diehard, you're probably going to go see it. But
yeah,
if you're not, I don't know. And I think when you talk about, there's a lot of biopics out there just in
yes, there
general. I
are.
think there's like a fatigue with it. Like the Dylan movie was pretty good. The Dylan movie had Timothy Chalamet, who's like a superstar now, who's been in Dune and big movies. And Jeremy the Bear was a good popular series, but he's not
He isn't at
A
that level.
list. He's good, but he's not like like a tier A
Yeah.
Hollywood star. Yeah,
And the other thing I think the Dylan movie had going for it is the era of Dylan's career they're talking about. They could use a lot of the songs that the casual Bob Dylan fan knows
sure, sure.
versus this is the Nebraska era, which the casual non music fan may know Atlantic City, but that's a stretch.
That's pretty much it. If you ask the diehards here, of course, know
Yeah,
all of it, but I don't. They can probably just name the casuals could probably name Atlantic City off that album,
yeah,
and that's it. I would think that if you were gonna do a Bruce movie, the era that you would pick would be the mid 70s, or maybe focusing on Born to Run. But I was just kept looking at it. I'm like, I don't know who they think they're gonna get
yeah.
to come out and see this.
Now, the book it's based on was absolutely amazing as a Bruce fan because Warren Zane, who wrote the book, the the premise is this is a mystery. Why did, after doing The River and before he did Born in the USA, why did he have to do Nebraska? What
Yeah,
was he working on? And that's so I knew that going in there. I knew that's what the movie was going to be about. And so when I brought my wife and son, they're like, "Oh yeah, we got to go see the Bruce movie." I said, "Okay, I just got to set you guys. It's slow.
yeah,
It's about depression. This is not a, hey, out in the street, working on the highway, joy." And both of them, because they knew going into that, they were like, "Oh, that was good. I really thought it was well done." But yeah, the casual fan, you're going over there, "Hey, let's go watch Bruce movie." It's a tough sell.
so there was a larger, see, because I'm thinking that was a more esoteric period of his music that casuals may not be aware of.
Right.
But are you saying the message of the movie was one not necessarily even of music itself or of him himself, but just that
Yeah.
general theme of depression that maybe a
Yeah.
non-fan would enjoy?
Yeah, so the the movie obviously is set in two time periods. There's a lot of flashbacks with him as a boy, and Stephen Graham from the UK plays his father. And so the premise is that because he's fighting depression, that these stories in Nebraska are how he's working on that emotion. And he does this, he gets obsessed with making this album sound just the way it's supposed to. And the premise is he has to get Nebraska out of his system to be able to move forward to Glory Days and all the other stuff on Born in the USA.
Yeah.
So it's really well done. Jeremy Strong plays John Landau, and he's from Succession and The Apprentice, and he's very good playing that character. It is interesting. I had the guy who plays Little Steven on the podcast, really great guy. Not one line in the movie. Not one E Street Band member has a line in the movie.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'll put Silver Linings Playbook, right?
Yeah. Phillies.
I told my son, if you can ignore the fact that the bad guy is a cowboy fan, you will love this movie
Yeah.
because the way Robert De Niro acts on game day is the way you act on game day. Like
True.
you, Kevin, my son puts up, he has a Snoopy on a Dallas, on a, his Snoopy on his doghouse that has a cowboy star.
Yeah.
He puts cowboy shirts everywhere, a banner. He decorates the house for game day. And then usually when they're losing, he starts taking them down. And I think the same thing. If you can forget that it's Bruce, I
Yeah.
think you might enjoy the movie just watching somebody work through depression and trying to figure out how to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes you get that in movies where you have a good generic message that could probably reach a lot of people, but the vessel wherein it's contained may not be the best
Yeah.
like container for it. And so I get that. I just think the thing that's really interesting about Bruce and why he doesn't really, I just don't meet a lot of fans who are my age or younger, or a lot of people my age or younger who would say that they're Bruce fans, because I think that a lot of what he writes was specific to the times in which they were written. And there's this German word called Zeitgeist. There's no English translation for it. It really just means like capturing the spirit of the moment. He tells the story of this is what it was like in 1975 when you were doing this crappy job and you just wanted to drive around with your girlfriend or something, or talking about glory days and wanting to be a baseball player or something. I just think it's hard for people who weren't alive then to go back and just think what it would have been like back then because we just weren't alive.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I think in the stories that he tells, they evoke such strong emotions and reactions from people who remember like their youth or their time in New Jersey in the 70s or 80s or in the Philadelphia area in the 70s or 80s and whatever. For the rest of us, it's like we just can't really relate to that. We just can't. So it's not for a lack of, and it's not always for a lack of trying. I've listened to Bruce over and over again trying to get something to click and just taking the music and putting it off to the side. I think a lot of the lyrical content is just stuff that's hard for millennials and Gen Z to relate to. I think it was just written for a certain audience at a certain time, and it's
Yeah.
always going to be hard for us to get that.
Yeah, I remember when he was playing the Super Bowl, my son and his friends, I was like, "Are you excited? Bruce is playing the Super Bowl?" And they're like,
No, that was what's so funny about that man was I remember because that was after the Janet Jackson wardrobe
"Yeah,
malfunction, where the NFL got super conservative for a while and they just rolled out one of the radio hosts up here. He called it the geezer train, and they
yes,
rolled out the geezer train of Tom Petty and the Who and Bruce and
yeah,
and then
Prince
they
and everyone."
yeah I love that because I was like, oh, he's a great artist. I don't need to
Yeah,
see some pop star. So that was my favorite stretch of Super Bowl halftime shows.
yeah. Any hot sports opinions about Bad Bunny?
Not one at all. I always say to people, I'm like, they're trying to reach the largest audience possible and a different audience. You're going to
Yeah,
tune in and watch the game whether you like him or not, whether you speak Spanish or English. So
yeah,
maybe you're not the target audience.
yeah. I know a couple of years ago, one of my good friends, when Dr. Dre and everything, he said, this was my youth. I loved all this. And I just think it should be a wide tent.
Well,
And
you're not trying to silo. You can't just have rock bands. You can't just have pop bands. You can't
yeah,
just have, it's the most globally watched game in the world, maybe the Champions League final or the World Cup final, one of the top five.
yeah,
So you're trying to cast as wide a net as possible. I think Bruce made sense at the time.
yeah,
I think this is my hottest like Bruce take, and it's something that I think about whenever the topic comes up. I feel like his best trait and his best ability is this storytelling,
yeah,
the lyric writing and the capturing of a moment in time and telling that story. But in a way, I just feel like I feel like he's more of a, this is where the opinion starts to fall apart. In a way, I think he's almost as much of a journalist or a BARD as anything else because he's
yeah,
telling a story and capturing a moment and he's telling it in a musical format. But I just don't think that Bruce himself is an amazing musician. I think he can write songs and I think that he can tell stories and he can cobble it all together. But I don't think he's an amazing singer. And I just wish that the stuff that I was listening to in these albums, I just wish the guitars were more at the front. I wish there was a lead here or there. I wish the bass was a little bit higher. I wish that the piano wasn't as high in the mix, and I wish they'd let Van Zant play a little bit more
yeah,
than he does. And God bless Clarence Clemens, but there's times where I'm like, okay, so the saxophone leads have basically just replaced the guitar leads here, and I naturally just gravitated towards heavier music that was guitar based, and
yeah.
that's why probably it contributed to why it doesn't click for me.
No, that makes sense, Kevin. Have you ever watched on Netflix his Broadway show?
No, no, I haven't.
I'm certainly not telling you like it's going to change your mind, but it is an hour and a half of him telling stories and then
Yeah.
weaving in with him playing a guitar, piano, singing songs.
Okay.
During the pandemic, he was doing segments on Sirius XM, My House to Yours, and he was basically a disc jockey. He would be
Mhm.
telling stories and he would play songs and would be able to share that storytelling. Because I agree
Yeah.
with you. I think, and I mention this sometimes, I wish I could find this April Fool's column. Someone wrote years ago an April Fool's column that basically said that Bruce was a Nobel Prize winning author. And so
Yeah.
they took every one of his albums and then it was a collection of short stories, a collection of poems, a family novel, and they used his actual titles, but in an alternate world, made up what these books would have been.
Yeah,
And I was like,
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting when you put it that way. There's been a lot of great musical storytellers over the years in that American kind of I don't even really consider Bruce like a rock artist. To me, he's always just been like I just call it like Americana.
yeah,
It feels like some kind of heartland Americana, the same kind of stuff that maybe Tom Petty and the
Yeah.
Heartbreakers played to an extent where they're just
Yeah. John Mellencamp,
John
yeah,
Mellencamp.
this Bob
Yeah,
Seger, that kind of, yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And but I look at, I'll stay with the Tom Petty theme. Like I look at that and I see like his band is smaller, but the layering of the music and the amount that you hear is more than enough. And I just like when I listen to like Born to Run, for example, because I guess the 50th anniversary just came up not long ago. So I went back and tried to listen to the whole thing again. And there's just so many times I'm like, I don't need to hear the piano here, or I wish this
Hmm.
would disappear and this would come into the foreground and this would disappear into the background, or there's a perfect time for this song to take off and let the guitar rip or something like that. And outside of like maybe what's the fourth song? Is it Backstreets? Outside of Backstreets, I think there's like a little guitar lead in there. But otherwise, it's just heavy with the piano and with Clarence. And I don't look like back in the day when rock and roll was first coming through, like the Ike Turner and BB King era. Like of course, like piano was a big rock instrument, and horns and brass were in rock and all that stuff. But I think like the modern interpretation of it is when like the Who and Zeppelin and Aerosmith and those bands of the late 60s, the Eagles, when they came through, at some point, rock music became guitar based,
Yeah.
you know? And I think at that point, when Bruce released Born to Run in 75 and then Born in the USA in 84, I
Yes.
feel like at that point, most contemporary rock music was guitar,
Yeah.
bass, drums, vocals. And so for that reason, it felt a little anachronistic to me. But again, I'm looking at it through the lens of a millennial.
Yeah. I think that's a fair synopsis. And, that, and I'm sure my audience is screaming out songs that have guitar leads,
I'm
but
sure
that's,
they do. And like I
yeah,
look, this is
exactly.
this
Yeah.
disclaimer. I haven't listened to every single song front to
Sure.
back,
Absolutely.
but I
And,
try. I try to learn a little bit about it.
and it's one of those things that we sometimes it just doesn't click. And I have my own blind spots of that. I know that if I spent probably more time doing it, I might get it, but there is only so much time for whether it's TV shows, movies, music. It just you're open to new things, but at the same time, there's only so much time to learn some different things.
That's true, and I think to a large extent, the old mantra is music is subjective, and you like what you
Right.
like. And yeah, to a certain extent, but like I'll go to hip hop and I'll
Mhm.
say that I don't necessarily find that to be true for all genres because I think modern hip hop is garbage. Just overplayed, boring beats, overly computerized stuff, auto tune on vocals. And I think less is more to back in the day where to go back to rock, like Ted Nugent was just plugging into a Marshall amp. He didn't have
Yeah.
1,500 pedals. They weren't putting all these computer effects on After Effects using Pro Tools, and in heavy metal drums are really compressed to hell and you get this sound where you put so many filters on something where it doesn't even sound like what you originally recorded to begin with. At what point is it like this was real music back in the day that was written by artists, not by 10 producers, and
Yeah.
there were minimal effects and computers involved and whatever. So I think you can make an argument that maybe music is probably subjective to a certain point.
Yeah. There it is. Absolutely. Going back to sports, is there events you haven't got to cover yet that's on your wish list?
The World Cup is coming to Philly next year, so that'll be great to go sit in the press box for that. That's probably at the top. But man, I went to so many events when I was in the field from about 2010 to
Yeah.
2020 that I feel like I've been lucky to see it all.
And are you a
Um,
fan of European soccer?
Absolutely. Yeah. Soccer was my number one sport. That's what I broke onto the scene with covering the MLS team up here. And yeah, you're always, it's a never, the bucket list never ends. Like, of course, I'd love to go to every amazing stadium in Europe and
Yeah.
go to all the great college football venues in the country, but you're not going to do all of it. But yeah, World Cup will be nice. And I have little kids, so it's hard for me to get down to games at night. But just to be able to get out in the field again and be in the locker rooms again and talk to the coaches and players again, that's something that I do want to do again at some point.
Mhm.
You just COVID hit, and we weren't allowed to go into the locker rooms anyway, and we all kind of
Yeah.
pivoted off of that, and we got stuck in our houses for a year. We're
Yeah.
finally coming out of that.
Yeah. So what do you got coming up, Kevin?
It's all Eagles all the time up here. The
Yes.
Eagles run the show. The Phillies wrapped up their disappointing season a couple of weeks ago, and they're number two in town. The
Yeah.
Northeast is a very big baseball just area in New York and Boston and Philly.
Yeah.
And the Flyers are turning a corner. We hope the Sixers, we'll see what they are if they can stay healthy. And yeah, the nice thing about Philly, man, there's always something to talk about. There's
Yeah.
never a dull moment up here.
So I will ask you to put on your basketball hat and Luca trade. Thoughts?
Oh, how do you do it, man? How do you just for the star power alone and the marketability and the fact that you just went to the finals with the guy? Somebody at ownership level should have stepped in and nixed that and said we're just not doing it. And then to the Lakers of all teams, of
Yeah,
course it's got to go to the Lakers. Come on, just disgusting.
yeah, we were joking about it. Okay, if you go, okay, if you're absolutely convinced you're going to do this, all right, we need to do someone on the East, and we need to get more than just one draft pick and a couple of players. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
listen, it's gutsy to do something like that. And there have been big trades like that up here. I remember when they
Yeah,
traded LaShawn McCoy to Buffalo and they basically got nothing in return. And they didn't re-sign Brian Dawkins, and Brian Dawkins went out and finished his career with the Broncos. That's stuff that people still talk about up here, man.
yeah,
They're going to be talking about Luca down there long
yeah,
after you and I have moved on from this world.
yeah. I mean, it by a miracle, you got Flag, but he's 18. Looks like he could have used another year of college ball, but he'll get there. But yeah, you now then what are you going to build around him? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Any final thoughts before I ask you the Mary question?
No, listen, I we do everything with an irreverent tone at
Good.
at the site, but I love ribbing the Bruce people, but I've tried. I've given it a legitimate effort, so maybe it's just not for me.
There is nothing wrong with that, Kevin. I am so thrilled that you joined me today. But I do, and I did feel bad. Damn, I'm making him listen to Thunder Road. But yes, I end every podcast with what I call the Mary question. And what that is, Jay Armstrong, who actually is from the Philadelphia area, he used to teach high school. He's now retired, but he would give his students the lyrics to Thunder Road, and they would
Mhm.
treat it as if it was a poem discussing the themes that Bruce explores, the imagery he explores, and then he would ask his class, does Mary get in the car? So, Kevin, that was your homework. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
I mean, I think so, because what's the line towards the end? Isn't it the town full of losers or something?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
town full of losers. We're pulling out of here to win.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give Mary the benefit of the doubt and say that she did get in the car with him.
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right, so plug the website.
Yeah, it's crossingbroad.com. Philly's irreverent sports blog. It's myself, a guy named Kyle Pagan, then we got a great group of freelancers, but nothing's off topic, man. We write about anything. If it's worth talking about, we'll write about it.
All right, that sounds good. All right, so Eagles Cowboys next week. Let's hope for a good game.
Yeah, let's just hope for a competitive game.
Yeah.
The Eagles won down there last year. I remember it was the sun glare game where Jerry, I think, came out afterwards and said, "We're not closing the curtains."
What?
Well,
Why? It's another afternoon game.
oh, good. So maybe a repeat of the of
Yeah, it just
CD Lamb not being able to see the ball
that
coming in.
makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Listen, I just hope it's a game free of stupid penalties and sun glare and whatever else that could throw off a good NFL experience.
Very nice. Kevin, this was a joy. I appreciate it. You're welcome anytime. Anytime you got a hot sports opinion, you want to join me, let me know. And hey, maybe the Cowboys will give you guys a game.
Maybe. No, it's my
Or
pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and I'll watch. What's the thing? Bruce's Broadway?
yeah, it's
Okay.
Springsteen on Broadway. It's on Netflix. It's about an hour and a half,
Okay.
and he basically goes through his life
Okay.
and sings.
I'll give it 30 minutes and we'll see if I can do the
All
whole
right,
thing.
I only recommend, I will say this.
Yeah.
There is a point where he says, I'm going to get you off suicide watch. And then he talks about his mom. Get through that.
Okay.
And then if you're still not enjoying it, no problem. No harm, no foul. Okay.
Okay. All right. I'll do you a solid. I'll do that.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll talk
Bye,
to you
man.
soon. Talk to you later. Bye. Listeners, be safe, be kind. We'll talk to you soon. Bye. All right. Sounds good, buddy. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Jesse.
Bye
Take it
bye.
easy, man. Yep.